Yes, you can do it. You can do it. But it's so good to see you all. This is the first of our district-wide meetings. So this group, Cohort 3, you all have been in a groupship now for 3 years. And this is our first semester meeting, and you'll have another one next semester in the spring. But our theme for this year is all around data analysis. So of course that means data and everything data. So of course we should bring in the academic education department to come in and discuss data with you. So without further ado, I want to introduce my supervisor, Dr. Meredith Park, and she's gonna get the meeting started.
Hi. I'm excited to talk to you, and really what I want to do is just give a little refresher, because I think some of you have heard me speak at your schools at different times. Some of you work at schools that just received reward status, so that is very good. When we talk about everything that drives what we do in the academic department and what drives what we do in the school, it's all about student achievement and student growth. Whether that comes from seeing it on a test score, or whether that comes from seeing it in the classroom in which you see personal growth of your students. That's the reason we're all here, is for our students, and try to provide the best environment for them as possible. And we all know the reason for school is to learn. So sometimes students learn a little bit, like how to make slime and that stuff that might get on your nerves, but it's okay because they are enjoying being at school. What we want to do is to be able to support you being teachers in the classroom and being a part of the school faculty. And so part of that means that we need to express to you the why. Why do we do certain things? Why do we focus on certain areas within the classroom? And so that's what we're going to kind of break up today and talk a little bit about it. But what I want to do is just give you a reminder. The state has now an accountability model that gives every school an A to F. So we did not get an A to F as a summative score for a district or as any of our schools did, because testing, there were a few issues with it last year. I don't know if you recall. It was a lot of fun. So the state has taken that away where they did not give us a grade last year. Fingers crossed, everything will run smoothly this year, and your school, although you can get a reward status, will also receive an A to F rating. So why is that important to us? Does anybody want to work at a school that has an F rating? No, because it doesn't show the work that you do in the classroom. So we want to make sure everything we do helps to show the success and the hard work that you put in on a daily basis with our students. So in order to know what we've got to, in order to know our benchmarks, what we're measured on, that's why we just keep talking about it. So one of the first things is, if you're a K-8 teacher in a K-8 school, there are 4 indicators that you're measured on for the accountability model. One is student achievement. So we just gave case benchmark tests across the district. This gives you projections for students, projected achievement levels. That's something that's very important for you to focus on, because it tells you later on in your reports how students scored or how they performed on the standards. So the standards are truly important. They drive what we do in the classroom. They are aligned vertically so that when our students leave our doors after 12th grade, then they are prepared to go into college or the workforce. But these standards are research driven. So they didn't just randomly pull standards and say, okay, that looks good for a second grader. Okay, that one looks good for a third grader. There's a lot of research behind it. So we have to trust that research. So with our state test, they are measuring how we taught the standards and how the students mastered the standards. So what we want to do is, with the case benchmark assessments, they're created for us. They're specific to Germantown Municipal Schools. They're specific to our pacing guides. And so we have that data, that's real-time data, just to give us feedback how our students are scoring on the standards. The second piece, the second indicator for a K-8 school and for high school as well, growth. Y'all heard TVOS. We just got student projections in TVOS. They were available on Friday. So that's something we'll be out working with you to look at as well. This is the growth of our students. The growth based on the cohort that they're in and how they perform similar to their peers. So with TVOS, that's a huge piece of it, and it also is tied to you as a teacher. The third one is chronic absenteeism. So you will see there are a lot of movements going on within our schools and across the nation to get students to be at school more. So if parents are planning a trip, try not to do it. Try not to take 2 weeks for fall break. Just take one. We all know this happens, and it happens often, and that's great experiences for the students, but it limits the time that we have with our students. And so we want to make sure if students miss, it is for health reasons or other reasons that can be avoided. So chronic absenteeism, I think maybe at your schools you've heard about the different tier support systems for that. And then finally, the fourth one for K-8 in high school, and then high school gets 2 additional ones, is the English language proficiency assessment. So students who come into our schools who have not tested out to be T1, T2, T3, T4 of English language learners, they take the WIDA access test. And then how they perform on that access test goes into that category. So those are your 4 if you're a K-8. If you're high school, you get 2 additional ones. One is graduation rate. So we just had, the state yesterday just released our graduation rate for Germantown Municipal Schools. It is 94.3. It's up from the previous year, so we're really excited about that. So we want to just continue to push to make our graduation rate higher so that we know that all of our students are getting those opportunities to leave our doors with a diploma. And then finally, the last one for the high school is the Ready Graduate Indicator. And those of you who work at the high school will talk with Mr. Gillespie about this. The Ready Graduate Indicator is, again, what are we doing to help see that our students will be successful once they leave our doors? If they're going to college, are we seeing that they're making the 21 on the ACT? Are we giving them early post-secondary opportunities in the form of dual enrollment, dual credit, advanced placement classes? Or are we looking at industry certifications? So in health sciences, are we, through CTE, are we offering industry certifications for those students so that when they leave our doors, if they want to go into the healthcare field, if they need the OSHA test, do they have that? Yes, we can provide that for them. So it's just a step closer to getting or to reaching gainful employment for them, and then they can continue to grow their career there. So those are just a few and just a brief summary of the indicators and what we try to focus on, because we know if you look at it holistically, if we're meeting all of those, are we doing a pretty good job? Yes. Do I ever say that we're teaching to a test? Absolutely not. No. But are we teaching the standards we're supposed to teach our students? Are we teaching them that it's important to be at school? Are we showing them that this is our why, of why we are here, and that they're important to us? If we do all of that, then I think we're pretty successful. So today, we're focusing on all of the data that goes along with that, and we're breaking up into individual groups. But I'm going to turn it back over. I think we have a little, another piece before we
So we have Miss Carlisle, and do you want, well, I'll wait for her to introduce her team. But basically, we met with all of our year 3 mentors, and we don't decide what is being presented to you. So it's really difficult to plan sessions for an entire group of teachers who are all in different disciplines, different grade bands. Some of you teach all of you teach students, of course, but some of you teach academic areas, and then some of you teach math, or you have guidance, or you're the school professional counselors. So it was important that we had something that kind of reached every teacher here. So Ms. Carlisle is going to talk to you all with her support teachers and how they reach all students in their classroom.
Hi guys, I'm Jana Carlisle. I teach 7th grade math over at Riverdale. And these fine ladies that are all huddled together, that's our art department. We've got Melissa Syczowski, Erin Sutton, and Tracy Sammons. And they have so graciously agreed to be here to present to you guys about how we collaborate through general ed and the fine arts department. So I'm going to hand it over to them, and they're going to basically explain how they do it.
So we try with everything we do to, well, almost everything we do, to try and plan across the curriculum, and we try to get to know our classes, the teachers of our classes, so that we can enhance what they're doing in their classroom to our classes. And a lot of what we do, and we're starting with this, and I don't know if you're familiar with visual thinking strategies. When we look at the evaluation process, and there's that section that says rich with text. We don't have a lot of that in the art room, but we have visual literacy in the art room, and it's, as we've come to find out also, it's extended into the language arts curriculum for, I think it's K through 8, Wit and Wisdom?
That's K2.
K2, okay. Well, that also kind of plays into this as well. So we'll start with this, and we do this with every project we do. Almost without exception, we do this K through 8, and it's visual thinking strategies.
Right, so, the way the visual thinking strategies works is it's basically, the students lead the conversation. The only thing that the teacher does is ask these three questions. What is going on in this picture? What do you see that makes you say that? And what more can we find? We don't always say it in those exact terms, but basically what we're doing is we're trying to get our students to read the image. So that's, when you think about literacy in art, it is visual literacy, like Melissa just said. So we might start off a art project with a work of art that's tied into, whatever it is that we're going to be teaching. And we don't stand up there and say, this is a work of art by so-and-so, here's the title of it. We don't give them anything. We just show them the image, and then we ask them what's going on in this picture. And you'd be amazed at where their little brains take them.
And shocked.
What's great about this is that it doesn't matter the level of the child, because they can all look at something and they may have trouble explaining at first, well, I see this and I like it. Or they might make a point, and then when you ask them, well, what do you see that makes you say that? They have to give validated points to explain what they're thinking. So this helps them in other areas. So if they were to write about something, then that's helping them to expand their thoughts. So we want to take you through to actually conduct VTS with you. And this is a research method that you can look up. There are lots of videos that you can watch on it, but it's amazing how some of your lowest kids will have these very evident aha moments where they make a connection of something, and it's really interesting. So we're going to start off. What do you see in this picture? You see what? Somebody's sleeping. So we can look in here, we see someone sleeping. What do you see that makes you say that he's sleeping? His eyes are closed. Okay, what more can we find about this picture? Yes. There's a train in the background. What makes you think that's a train? It's a train. So when we think about a train and we see this picture and it links us to a train, what about it looks like a train?
Smoke coming out the top, the little
Very good.
box cars.
So we can see some box cars. When we usually think of a train, we think about extended shapes and the smoke coming out of the top. What do you think that smoke is? Why is there smoke coming out of the top? Right, so the coals are burning, so the train is actually in motion. And so we get that idea because the smoke is on there. So what more can we find about this picture? What else do you see? The train's gonna crash. Okay, what makes you say it's gonna crash? There are no more tracks. So when we look at this area of the picture, we can see that there are tracks here, and then there are not any. Okay, what more can you find? Someone's telling them to stop. What about this person makes you think that they're trying to tell them to stop? So his body language, he's holding a red flag. And so we can see by the shape of the person there that he is trying to explain to the train that they need to stop. He's signaling danger. So in a class discussion, we might do this for 5 minutes, and we're never going to tell the kids you're right or wrong. If they try to act silly or try to make a point, you say, oh, okay, and you make them explain, well, what makes you say that? And then they kind of jump back into participating appropriately. And you always want to repeat what they say, because if they are a more soft-spoken student, then they may have a great point, but you want the whole class to hear it. So whenever they make a point, you repeat it back, and then you say, well, what made you say that? And if they're having trouble, you might say, who can help them out? What do you think that that idea was brought on by? And so you can have a really great conversation. I've had a social studies teacher ask me to come and do this in her class before at another school that I worked in, because they were studying the Renaissance. And so I pulled up an art print from the Renaissance, and I walked in and I did a VTS session with her class, and it was amazing, some of the ideas that the kids brought about, and then they were able to carry that into their ideas about what they were studying in class. So there are art prints about math, about science, about technology. There, anything in the world that you may have going on in your classroom, there's probably some sort of art print that your art teachers can pull, or we're happy to help you with, that can relate to that in some way and kind of get them interested and engaged. It's just a nice little hook at the beginning to get their minds in the direction you want them to go.
And also, these can lead into some written responses as well. This could very easily be presented as a writing prompt. You know, they're looking at it and you ask them to write what they think is going on. A couple of years ago, we had RTI groups. We called it Art TI for nerds. And we did a whole lot of this because to us that was how we could relate. That was how we could feel like we were teaching our content, but also sort of hitting some of those literacy standards. So it's a really powerful tool to use, and it's not just for our teachers.
And just to talk about the Wit and Wisdom, this is a second grade example, and Miss Knight sent this to us. What they do in Wit and Wisdom, or language arts with Wit and Wisdom, and there's a whole section of paintings, the actual paintings they use, and talk about that help, you know, support what they're teaching in the classroom, but you're bringing in something visual, and you're tying in the arts, so it works both ways too.
We got really excited when we realized this was going on, because sometimes we don't see the text in like their curriculums. So I walked in a room one day last year and I was like, oh my God, she's got art prints up, this is amazing. And she's like, yeah, it's like part of our curriculum now. That's pretty terrific.
And there's a link that isn't working, sorry, but it links to the, it's on the, isn't it on our GMSC site? This, you know, I don't even know what to.
I don't know which link it is.
I can't. It's Google Drive folders, yes. So I guess we could share this presentation if you want, and the link is there. I'm gonna go.
So the other thing we do is we stalk our teachers' websites on a regular basis. We look at their calendars and what they're teaching. We use the GMSD website to follow curriculum maps and things like that. So that we, when we're planning, can always sort of either be a step ahead or like follow in right behind with something that they've already learned, so that we are following up on it in the art classroom.
Okay, so why should you plan across the curriculum? And I got this from a little clip on Concord University, the University of Portland. Cross-curricular planning can help students understand the importance of individual skill sets and how they can harmonize with larger goals. It creates an opportunity for contextualizing and connecting content knowledge, making students more likely to remember what they have learned, because we've got all kinds of learners in the classroom. Start small, get to know your general education teachers. We thought we were, anyway, teaching this more to, we were confused about who we were presenting to.
Wait a second,
No,
it was her.
it was me. I communicated well. I did. But get to know your math teachers, because we love to, like you said, we stalk our teachers. Like, what are you doing?
We sit down to PLC and we're like,
What are they doing?
the laptop's up, it's like half Pinterest and half
And
pages.
I know in the past, Ms. Sychowski has come to me and said, okay, Carlisle, tell me where you are in math. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm telling her, and she's like, where's the data showing that you need the most help in? And so I know, and she'll get to it, but at one point I said, I need help with my kids being able to see scale factor. They are not able to relate it from a smaller image to a larger image. And Ms. Sychowski nailed it for my kids. They came right back, and you'll see some examples of that in a few minutes. But I just wanted you to know that these ladies are fantastic working across our school setting, being able to get to know our gen ed teachers, and they're, you know, begging for data. Where do you need help in? What's the standard that we're working on this week or this month or whatever it may be? So they're going to show you a few examples of that in a little bit.
Thank you. And then, so we like to ask for pacing guides. You can just, you know, send those to your math teachers. I don't think anybody would be offended if you sent your pacing guide. We love to have them, because that tells us when you're teaching what and how, you know, when we can kind of plan in a project that might, you know, help what you're doing or might add to what you're doing. So in kindergarten, what we did is now our standards changed this year, officially. So these standards may look very different from slide to slide depending on when we taught that lesson. But, with kindergarten, and then Jana went and put in all the standards from, she went and found out the standards, their general ed standards. So there's a shape cityscape, and we taught that to enhance shape and in their the kindergarten curriculum. And also cutting and gluing and basic
So
fine motor
we're
skills.
hitting our standards, but we're trying in general education standards as well.
And then this one is bug hunt, and if you look, it corresponds to the kindergartner's study of insects and plants. So it's a little magnifying glass of bug. And I'm just gonna go through these pretty quickly. If y'all have any questions, just jump on in there. This is a Ted Harrison landforms project, and that ties in with the study of landforms in first grade.
First grader did that?
No, a first grader did not do that. That was their project.
Oh.
But they weren't far off. That was not a first.
But most of these are student.
Most, yes.
Yeah, sorry, that was.
Second grade, they study chameleons clearly,
We
and
love the chameleon.
yes, obviously, this is over a few years. This is not just 1 year project, but this studies, habitats and adaptations in second grade. So that corresponds to that.
But you also tied in with the literature piece of Eric Carl, which I think
Yes.
is fantastic.
We try to drag in a book if we can, especially for the younger grades. And we did do the mix of chameleon, and it was really fun. They like chameleons. Desert habitats, and then there's the Zambezi River crocodile collage. This is all second grade and still ties in. We love, I guess, habitats and adaptations. We also had the big contest at the zoo when they built the Zambezi River habitat, so we tied that in as well, as we can get a community connection in there.
That one was good.
No,
But
I
we
don't
do
think
have
it
our
was. There were
permanently
two of
displayed
them.
there, we're pretty excited. Third grade is all about, environment, so again, we love a good desert, cacti thing, and tropical rainforest, and then, we have math connection on the end with fractions, and we use Ed Emberly's picture pie, to tie that in. So again, we really try to pull from as many different, subject areas as we can. It's just a lot of fun to pull from science and social studies.
Okay, fourth grade.
Fourth grade, they study Native American culture, and so we have Aboriginal art pieces that we are inspired by, so we have them create an animal in an Aboriginal art style. Then we did the clay sun, and then again, there was fractional art in that one as well. So bring out a map.
There's more fourth grade. So Native American spirit animals, and then bird and cage, and they, obviously, the Native American cultures is a really easy thing for us to tie in.
The Bird in a Cage, there's a recorder song called Bird in a Cage, and so with that, we were linking to music because they're learning recorder in fourth grade and they're really excited about it. And so we were doing collage, and we actually tore up copies of the sheet music and had that in the back of the collage for the Bird in a Cage.
Okay. Fifth grade, really quickly, they study cells. There's our cell composition, which weirdly enough turned out absolutely beautiful. And then we did a planetary landscape to correspond with their study of the solar system.
In seventh grade, this is what I was talking to Ms. Sarchowski about, the scale drawing, so the students would take a selfie with their iPad or camera or whatever, and they would scale it to enlarge it on a bigger grid paper, noting the scale factor from the original to the large one, and they're able to create the shapes per box, I think. Is that how
They enlarged it per box. So, and we did a 1 inch grid to a 2 inch grid. We did 1 inch.
Usually we go from 5x7 to 10x14. for the final work of art, and they have to hand grid everything. We have them hand grid the photo, hand grid the paper, and work box by
Beautiful.
box.
Use a ruler and measure it, it's fantastic. I'm so happy.
Yeah, and sometimes we're like, have you held a ruler before? This is the inches, right, so we have a quick lesson on that, but, and that project has mutated over the years. A lot of times it was self-portraits, because it's a really good way to teach them to draw portraits, and it's unbelievable the end result, because even if someone cannot, just sit there and look at a person and draw them, if they do it square by square, it looks like them when they're done. So it has a really high success rate. But we've done it with animals. We tie it in with all different types of things. So that's a little bit of what we do.
Thank you all so much for that. And for me, I mean, that was wonderful to hear, because I remember being a teacher and math teachers coming and saying, how can I help? But this is a direct correlation in how everyone in the building plays an important role in your school's data. So I heard them mention over and over and over again about the standards and what standards are being addressed. So take this example, go to your maths teachers in your buildings and say, hey, can we collaborate on this project? They're showing you how it ties into wit and wisdom. And I'm sure the same things happen in expeditionary learning, and I'm sure they do. If not, maybe they could figure out a way to make that happen. It's now to break out and do breakout sessions. So
Dr. Clark was talking to us earlier about accountability and how we're measured on different indicators. And as classroom teachers, really the two that we most affect are achievement and growth. So that's the bulk of that is, of course, the teachers in the classroom. So grades 2 to 12, all of that's counted, or 3rd to 12th is counted. But second grade, of course, your foundations that we do for 3rd grade. And you're the first time, you will have your own TVOS score, which this is what we use to kind of measure our progress throughout the year. The reason this is important for special educators, even though we're gonna just go over math and ELA and science social studies, because you can get a lot of information from the ELA reports if you're a science and social studies teacher, just about their reading. So even if we're not gonna go over those specifically, because we don't have to reach till 7 o'clock, you can get a lot of information from the ELA report that I'm going to start with. So, first of all, in our office, we kind of track the number of kids that were proficient or advanced from the year before. And then we give you kind of a target number. And what we do is we take that target number and we find out from these reports if we're hitting that now or if we have more work to do. So, we only really look at, in our office, this projected achievement level here. This percent correct is not a true percent correct because it doesn't consider DOK level in it. So you could have gotten a bunch of easy ones and not been a 3, it could be a 2+. But somebody that got some easy ones and then a lot of hard ones could be a 3, but your percent correct is, it looks different. Have you run into that before? You're like, why is this kid a 2 and this kid's a 3, their percent correct is higher? It's because they might have gotten more easier questions than the other thing. So we really only look here, and this is where we really want to encourage you to look too. So if they're a 1 or a 2, we need to work on that. Those are kids that we're going to want to push to a 3 or a 4, because the only credit we get is for the kids that are proficient or advanced. We want to grow that number as much as possible. So beyond that, we can go to, for ELA, text difficulty. So on this report, we're going to see that we have 2 passages. We have an easy one and a hard one on this first case test. We can see how each of the students scored on that test. So not all the students are here, of course. We can come across and see how they did on each of these. What's interesting is when you have some kids getting the hard ones, but not the easy ones. So that's something to think about. Maybe they're overthinking it. Those are kind of things that you want to start thinking about when you're looking at these as a teacher. The depth of knowledge is just going to rate them on how they answered the DOK 1, DOK 2, or 3 level questions. So you'll see that kids that it correlates directly to this percentage here, their proficiency level, and then that's where you can kind of dig into why are these percent corrects different? Well, That's gonna kind of flush out here in the depth of knowledge, because they probably have a lot more threes answered correctly than ones. Does that make sense? Strain results, so this is just for each domain. This is my favorite part when you're thinking about RTI groups and how you're gonna address certain areas with certain kids. If you've got the same kids scoring in showing maybe foundational literacy, then we might make a group of those kids for RTI. Genre results, it's just gonna show you where we fall in literary or nonfiction. So at the bottom is kind of where the teacher can really self-reflect here, because we see that as a teacher, it looks like I'm below my school. And then my school is just kind of at the district. We don't make a lot of assumptions on teaching ability or anything like that at this point in the year, because you just got these kids, right? And a lot of this could be determined by what you received from the year before, how the other schools, if they came in with a bunch of rock stars in this cohort. It all depends on the kind of kid, and what they came in with, and then also if you were on pacing, maybe, we never know. So we try not to judge too harshly on those points, but it is a great way for you to reflect on your own instruction and knowing where your kids are in the room. So you probably you would have a lot more information about that than we would, because you're in the room with those kids every day, and you know if they are maybe higher kids than last year, or maybe they were struggling. Maybe you know that you got a few more strugglers than everybody else. Those are kinds of things that you all have to talk about in your PLCs and kind of in your own building. But don't think that we're all just like, ooh, already, because that's not what we do. We're here just to support you and kind of think about those kids that are 2 pluses, how to get to the 3s. Any questions about this ELA report in particular? Dr. Carr, do you want to add anything since you're in here, our resident expert?
I know you don't want me to be in here.
No, I'm glad.
I do want to add something that's kind of aside from this,
Yes.
but back to the presentation from the art teachers. As MAPS or LAMPS teachers in your building, they are helping support the curriculum. But also, just know when we look at these, we understand this is how those children are performing in that specific area, but we know that the whole education of the child includes those times where they get to go to MAPS or LAMPS, because that may be the highlight of that child's day. So what they get in there, if they may not even know, like just for art, if that's something that is ingrained in the child, if that is his escape, or that is his true passion, but he may not be the best in language arts. So if you work with your MAPS or LAMPS teachers, I'm so glad they did that presentation, because it's a win-win. It's not, everybody at the school has a specific purpose. And when you can tie that purpose together, it really helps that child succeed. So if you have a child that you see is struggling in language arts, but you know like music is their jam, like that is their thing, then work with a MAPS teacher to say, hey, how can we look at this together? Because if you're covering poetry, which we know is a big piece of 4th grade language arts, how do you bring that into the rhythm and what you see in your music class? Just like you can also bring in tempo and math concepts in the music class, just like what they talked about with art. So all of these together help us see these numbers increase. But if you're in a classroom where you're a gen ed teacher, when you look at these, I am going to be focused on this for my self-reflection, but the major piece to me that I'm going to look at is I'm going to say, all right, let me look at these children here who are 1s and 2s. Let's see how are those children's needs being met? What do I need to do for those children? Do I need to identify those children? Are they in RTI groups? Are they not even identified yet for RTI, and why not? Then look over here and see, okay, what have we done and how did that child perform in my class on every assignment that I gave them? I'm going to pay specific attention to that child and see, is something going on personally? Is something going on emotionally? Is it because I might need to teach that standard a little bit better? All of those reflective pieces come in here, but just keep in mind, it's not just on you as the individual classroom teacher.
it's everybody together working as a team at the school, which is why I'm so excited that other presentation happened today. So, sorry, that's my side note. I'm about to leave, so I'll leave you alone.
No, it's okay, I'm glad you did. So if there aren't any questions about ELA, we're gonna look at a math report really quick, and we'll go a little faster. So in math, we're basically looking at the same report. The only difference is that, of course, we don't have a text complexity because we don't have a passage. And then we don't have to worry about the nonfiction versus fiction because we're just looking at standards here in math. So here, again, we want to focus on the projected achievement level. This is the teacher's percent of kids that are projected to be a 3 or 4 on T ready. We want to keep pushing that up the whole year. No matter where you start, as long as you're pushing that forward, your growth is going to be good.
Who did you say? I'm sorry, I missed that part. Who were you talking
The regular classroom teacher, means that 78.9% of her students are projected to be proficient or advanced.
about? Okay.
So this, and what we'll do in our office is we normally take that percent, we multiply it times the number of kids that took it, so we have an actual number of students, and then we translate it out, back out in your data meetings, which will be around soon. But just for this class, this is the number of students, or the percent of students. So that all comes from this column. You just want to make sure that keeps going forward. We also want to make note of, this is a good place to make note of kids that fall into subgroups. So just so you're aware, you're thinking about where's their proficiency, because if they are hitting any kind of subgroups, economically disadvantaged, special ed, Black, Hispanic, Native American, if that's on our radar all year, of course we're gonna do what's best for all of our kids. But sometimes when you know that you just have that information, it really does help to kind of wait a few more seconds so Kelsey can answer. Just so I make sure that she's with me all the time. Because the school is definitely, that's where the school's grade is gonna come from. Not just all kids, that subgroup is like 40% of the overall achievement score for the school. So if that's on everybody's radar, we're doing great. If we see, especially if we see any of those subgroup kids that are falling like at a 2+, a 2, we know that all of our teachers are capable of moving those kids forward. So I think sometimes it's just knowing. I did want to make a note about RTI and how you're being supported in that area, and you may not even know. The RTI coaches, they go through these reports right when the data's finished, and they take all of the kids that are ones and they put them on Easy CDM to get them universally screened, and then they do a survey level assessment if they're falling below the 25th percentile, so that we can actually target a deficit area for a lot of the kids that are struggling. So that's happening over here, and you may not even be aware that that's happening. So those kids are on the radar of the RTI coach, and they probably will come and talk to you about them too. But they get that from those numbers.
I have
Yes.
a question about that easy CBM though.
Yes.
The kids that I have found that flag on the case, when you easy CBM them, then they don't flag for that. And the easy CBM, from what I can see, and case, you're not comparing apples to apples here.
You're not. No, that's correct.
So,
That's a good observation. Would you like me to say more about that?
no,
But I
I'm
think
just
we
saying
should.
it's
I think
kind
we
of.
should. That's a great question. So the case test is measuring standards progress. So it's only standards, grade level standards. Easy CBM, when you put them on it over here, that's now we're in 3rd grade skills land, where it's a lot easier.
Yes.
Yes, there's only 3 choices and it's all multiple choice. You have to really be struggling to flag on that screener. But that is nationally norm for national percentiles. In Germantown, if you're hitting the 35th percentile in mathematics, you are very different from most of the students in the class.
Right.
So just because you're not falling below the 25th on Easy CBM doesn't mean you don't need help.
Right.
And we're working right now, because we have noticed that, we're working right now to kind of push that boundary a little bit higher in math, so that we are intervening with more kids than just those few that may flag, because we do see a problem as well.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Yes, thank you for asking those. I think sometimes, even though you're year 3 and a lot of you are, I'm looking at content lead people in the room, I mean, I'm looking at a lot of experience in this room. It's always good to have a refresher on what is our universal screener versus what's our standards-based measure for progress on 10 ready. So math, I think, is pretty much self-explanatory, just like the ELA side. Do you have any questions about this particular report? Okay. So the school, it looks like this, in this particular, if I were a teacher and I was reflecting, this is my data. Of course, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna look through my children and see, you know, what standards are they struggling with? Where can I plug in? Do I need to offer some higher level questions in class? But then when I come down here, I think, ooh, I'm just a little bit below the school. My school, it looks like, is carrying the district, but me personally, I'm kind of right at the district. So this is not a terrible thing at all. What I might think is, I wonder what kind of kids are populating in my room. If I can say that my kids are the same or higher than somebody else, maybe I should go to that person and say, hey, what do you do for this standard? Because it looks like you, my kids are below, and I don't know how much, I don't know who that is either. So that's up to you to be comfortable and vulnerable in your groups and your PLCs and go to your teammates and have that conversation. In most places, we're not sharing teacher data with anyone, with teacher to teacher or anything like that. So that would kind of be on you to go and reach out for help once you looked at your own reports. The next thing that, well, the next report that's really important is this item sampler. This one is on this one we can see what each student answered for each item, which this one is great because now I'm going to see sometimes what kind of questions they're missing. I can see exactly what they put. So if I want to throw up a question after I've kind of analyzed my data, I know what everyone put, and I know what most of them are going to say. I can even call on a student and say, can you explain to me why you answered that? Or why you thought about it that way? And then we can have a really nice discussion based on that from this report. Just a quick glance at this report will show you that, what do you notice?
Just about every kid missed that one question.
Why do you think that happened?
Quite pacing.
Yes. So it said, this one is obviously a select 2, which a lot of times on the first case, the kids, it kind of throws them off because we haven't seen it in a while. I didn't fully read the prompt. That's such an easy fix in a classroom because we just have to put a couple of those up in morning work or bell work, and that problem is usually fixed. So that's totally easy, something you could do right off the top.
But on that one, and I have one on mine like that too, that's why I'm asking this, is that like, it looks like the majority of them did pick 2. So the problem wasn't that they didn't pick 2 answers, it's that they didn't pick 2 quality answers.
Yes.
So like, is that a different, like you think of it differently that way? Because they did notice it, the majority of them knew to pick 2, but they just weren't picking like the right ones.
What Camille said. Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's a good observation. And honestly, like I wasn't really digging into this before. I was just looking at what one that everyone is. So that is a really good point. It looks like only 2 kids only chose 1. So it may be that we need to have a conversation about what is the best answer or what does make the most sense.
I also heard someone say pacing could be an issue also. So if the entire class missed that, it could be that I, the teacher, didn't make it to that yet, and my students don't know the material.
I had a situation like that on this past case where just about every child missed the question, and it was a pacing issue. It was lesson 21 in module 1. It was all 4 operations and a word problem. What?
The standard, y'all are there though, right?
Yeah, I mean, but it was touched on just briefly in lesson 21 of module 1 is what I'm saying. So, I mean, yes, it was in there, but it wasn't really in there deeply enough and for a long enough period of time for them to be able to answer that question. So
And I'm glad you brought this up because it's made it kind of reminded me to talk about another thing. So for that,
In mathematics, we do have certain standards that are paced out over the course of the year. That's not true, in science, they do that as well. ELA is not that way. That is a comprehensive test that it just is the same difficulty the whole year, and you're kind of using it as, you're making sure that they're growing to the benchmark. So a lot of times their scores, their overall class scores don't look like math in the beginning, but by the end, everyone's great. In math, we can only select a whole standard, and that's it. So we kind of wrestle with this, should we go ahead and put it on so the teacher has information for the future? So in that case, that would be why that.
So kind of like,
Yeah.
for example, the first benchmark is covering A, B, and C. The second benchmark is, you know, the next, and then your summative is all of it.
Yes, yes.
So that's really where you need to be seeing your growth, because you're,
Yes, yes. So there are some places where, in that particular standard, that is developed over the whole course of third grade.
right,
But we don't want to wait to put it on case, because then you might not have the information you need to keep going.
sure, yeah.
I know in fourth grade, second grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade, where we have a lot of measurement work, Tennessee requires us to do customary and metric, but Eureka mostly deals with metric because it supports the place value standards. So we don't want to wait to do customary till the end, because we need to know who knows that, who doesn't. So that's also on there, but we don't expect, like, if I was looking at data and I saw like everyone in the district in fourth grade missed this one, and it's because it was inches to feet, or, which that's an easy one, which most would get. But if it's something like customary units, I would kind of just disregard and move about my business, because I know that's customary and Eureka maybe didn't cover it. Does that make sense? So we're kind of doing the same kind of digging that you are, without the knowledge of the students, which is why we may come and ask you questions, because we just don't have that knowledge about the kids. So this report is just a quick glance at what everyone put. You could, I've seen people cut it in strips and go over the whole test, which I would use a lot of discretion when doing that, because we don't want to take up a whole lot of test time reteaching things that a lot of the kids probably did get right. So we might not need to go over number 13 with everybody. So that's why just pick and choose and manage your time and for what you want to show the kids as a group. The math one is basically the same, but in math we have a little bit more. So on number 4, here, what's happening there? Is a different type of problem? Either,
So we're gonna drag it?
Yeah, drag it.
it could be a
plug it
matching.
in.
So because it doesn't have a multiple choice, or, you know, 2 or more answers, that one is a technology enhanced item. So you would need to go back into the test and look and see what that actually was, to figure out what happened there. So, and because that's come up where people are like, what does correct, incorrect mean? I don't know. And that's all that is. Does anyone have any questions about this report? Because I did want to save time at the end to answer any kind of questions about case, as opposed to EasyCBM, which we covered that, thank you, Miss O'Brien. Or any other questions you have about the whole process, because case is connected, very much connected to RTI and the way that we divide our groups out, and who we target for tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. Any questions about the overall assessment process here in GMSD? I do want to kind of back up what Dr. Park said about us not teaching to a test here. We know that you cannot shortcut expertise. In math, ELA, we know that authentic learning experiences that you give students every day are really important to their progress on a test. And we know that we're not going to just go back and take our case reports and teach, test prep. We're not going to do that. We're going to teach the full standard, because this is just a measurement of how close we are through our grade instruction. So I just wanted to make sure I left you with that before you go, because again, we don't teach to a test. We just use this to see where all of our babies are.
so that we can help make sure they have all the supports they need to be successful for the whole year. No questions? Are we good?
That's it. Yes, yes. That's it. You all are free to go. Thank you so much for